Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Good, nice to meet you. What's the act called?
Charlotte and Jonathan.
And you thought the combination would work. Whose idea was it?
In 2012, a shy, bullied teen in a tracksuit walked onto Britain's Got Talent. Simon Cowell looked skeptical. The audience expected another awkward audition.
Good voice.
Thank you very much.
How old are you?
17.
That's unbelievable. Jonathan, you are a future star.
Thank you.
Then Jonathan Antoine opened his mouth and delivered an operatic, unprecedented voice that shattered the room. It was viral history. But what really happened after BGT 2012? In 2026, he stands as a sleek, independent global tenor. Did the world misunderstand the most famous runner-up in BGT history? Do you remember where you were when you first heard that voice? The BGT paradox, a £1,000,000 shadow. And here's the part people forget when they replay that Britain's Got Talent 2012 clip like it's just a wholesome throwback. It wasn't only stage fright, it was the beginning of a decade-long struggle to stay loyal to a partner while slowly losing himself. Because the moment Jonathan Antoine stood there, protecting Charlotte Giaconelli with that "we're in this together" energy, the BGT machine didn't see friendship. It saw a product. Back then, the storyline was almost perfect. Shy boy, best friend, bullies in the background, and a judge panel ready to press the red buzzer. Simon even floated the idea of splitting them up in the auditions, and Jonathan basically said no, not in a dramatic Hollywood way, just in a stubborn, teenage, I'm not leaving my person kind of way. And that single decision made him the hero and the hostage. Because when you come second on BGT, you don't just go home and practice. You get swallowed by calendars, meetings, vocal coaches, photo shoots, and people who smile at you while measuring your future in numbers. The day after the final, it wasn't a sympathy pat on the back, it was a reported £1,000,000 psycho deal floating in the air like a golden handcuff. Imagine being 17 and suddenly your voice has a price tag bigger than most homes. And yes, we have to talk about the most British plot twist ever. They lose to a dancing dog. Ashley and Pudsey were adorable. No hate, but it's still hilarious that a duo singing The Prayer with a near-religious standing ovation got edged out by pause and choreography. So here's the paradox. Jonathan becomes the most famous runner-up in Britain's Got Talent history, and that fame hits harder than winning. The industry loved describing his sound with words like velvety and creamy, the kind of praise that feels warm, until you realize it's also a box. Classical crossover. Safe, polished, predictable. Meanwhile, Jonathan is a real person under that spotlight, trying to grow up in public while staying loyal to Charlotte, the partner everyone associates with his origin story. And the loyal protector narrative made great TV, but off-camera, it adds pressure. If you're the symbol of loyalty, you're not allowed to want something different, even quietly. Would you have dumped your best friend for a £1,000,000 solo deal? Be honest, it's a tough choice, right? And if the duo was so successful, why did the harmony suddenly turn into a haunting silence in 2014? The silent divorce, when the music stopped. That silence in 2014 did not arrive with a screaming headline or a messy on-stage blow-up. It arrived the way real endings often do, quietly, with polite statements and a lot of unsaid truth. The duo split wasn't a feud. It was a desperate bid for air in an industry that was suffocating Jonathan's true operatic identity. And once you see it like that, the whole "what happened to Jonathan Antoine" from BGT question starts to feel less like gossip and more like survival. Because after Britain's Got Talent 2012, Jonathan and Charlotte were not just two teens who could sing. They were a storyline. They were a brand. They were the loyalty moment people replayed when Simon hinted Jonathan should go solo and he refused. But by 2014, the same industry that loved the duo also started doing what the industry always does. It separated the parts, tested the market, and asked the uncomfortable question: who sells better alone? Reports around that time pointed to solo offers from Sony, and the official explanation stayed clean and grown up. Creative differences, different directions, different dreams. Not betrayal, not bitterness, not "I hate you, never speak to me again," but more like two people realizing the same harmony that saved them on TV was now holding them back in real life. And if you've ever outgrown a version of yourself that the world still loves, you already know how painful that is. Of course, the internet did what the internet does. Rumors of a bitter feud started flying around because apparently people can accept a breakup quicker than they can accept a peaceful goodbye. But when you look at the reality, it reads like creative divergence, not war. Charlotte wanted her path, Jonathan wanted his, and Jonathan's want was loud even when he was quiet. He wanted to be taken seriously as a classical operatic tenor, not just the sweet kid from a viral clip. Then came the proof. In 2014, he released his solo debut album, Tenor, and it hit #1 on the official classical chart, with the added shock factor that he was still only 19. That's the moment the BGT runner-up turned into a chart-topping solo artist, and it should have felt like winning. It should have felt like freedom. It should have sounded like fireworks. But here's the hidden part. The mainstream skips because it ruins the shiny glow-up montage. Chart success doesn't cure the inside of a person, it just makes the outside look convincing. Jonathan has spoken about struggling with depression, and there was even a high-profile moment when he and Charlotte had to withdraw from a Royal Albert Hall performance after he was diagnosed with acute depression. So while the public saw spotlight and applause, he was learning a brutal lesson early. Your voice can fill a hall, and you can still feel empty inside it. And right in that turbulent shift, there was a human detail that mattered. Jonathan talked openly later about a Canadian girlfriend, Michelle Doucet, and called her a light in his life, someone tied to his mindset changing during that era. That matters because transitions are not just business moves, they're emotional earthquakes. People don't reinvent without something or someone helping them hold the pieces. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from a winning team just to find your own voice? It's terrifying, isn't it? And if Jonathan Antoine could top charts and still battle darkness, what does that say about how we measure success? What if I told you that the shyness everyone mocked was actually a secret superpower Jonathan didn't even know he had? The revelation, the hidden superpower. And that's why the question isn't just, why did the duo split? It's, why did Jonathan seem to struggle even when he was succeeding? Because if you rewind that BGT footage now, with everything we know today, the awkward pauses and the tense body language stop looking like shyness and start looking like something else entirely. Here's the twist that rewrites the whole story. In 2022, Jonathan Antoine received a clinical autism diagnosis, and when he spoke about it publicly later, it didn't feel like a headline. It felt like a key turning in a lock that had been stuck for 28 years. Suddenly, the weirdness people teased him for had a name. And the name wasn't an insult, it was an explanation. Think about what the BGT environment actually is. It's not a stage, it's a sensory storm. Blazing lights, huge crowds, cameras floating in your face, judges staring like they can see through your bones. And the sound, the sudden swell of noise, the clapping, the boos, the whispers, the pressure. If your brain processes sensation differently, that stage can feel less like a spotlight and more like a traffic jam in your nervous system. This is where two words matter: masking and overload. Masking is when someone learns to hide their natural reactions just to fit in, smiling at the right time, acting normal, copying how other people socialize, forcing eye contact, swallowing discomfort. It's survival, but it's expensive. Sensory overload is what happens when the brain gets too much input at once and can't filter it fast enough. And if you've been masking for years, overload doesn't always look like a meltdown on camera. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion, shutdown, panic, or that quiet blank stare people misread as attitude. Now zoom back to 2012. Jonathan wasn't just a teenager with nerves. He was a teenager in a highly engineered TV machine, trying to be brave while his body screamed, "Too much, too loud, too bright." And the wild part is, he still sang. He still delivered an operatic sound that felt bigger than the room. So what if that voice wasn't only talent, but also a coping tool? This is the part I can't stop thinking about. Opera is structure. It's control. It's breath and discipline and clean rules inside a chaotic world. So when Jonathan sings, it's like he's filtering the matrix, turning noise into meaning. The thing that made him look different was also the thing that made his voice hit like a lightning strike. And when he finally understood why he felt like an alien for 3 decades, it brought something most people never get. Relief, liberation. Not because life became easy, but because life finally made sense. Imagine living your whole life thinking you're broken, only to discover you're just wired differently. Can you relate to that feeling of finally finding the missing puzzle piece? So here's a question for you. If we had known this in 2012, would the public have been kinder, or would the machine have pushed even harder? And how many people are still being called too quiet or too odd when they're actually fighting a sensory battle nobody can see? Because the internal transformation was only half the story. How did he walk 10,000 steps into a completely new body? The physical alchemy, 10,000 steps to survival. And once you understand that Jonathan's brain was fighting a sensory war in plain sight, the next question gets sharper. If the shyness was actually strength.
Because I always remember you as being really shy.
Yeah, I look back on the me that I was back when I hadn't done the show, and it's like looking at a different part of myself.
Then what about the body everyone used as a punchline? Because the truth is, his 120-pound weight loss wasn't a vanity project. It was a rhythmic, disciplined survival tactic to reclaim his health from the convenience of the American lifestyle. Here's what changed. Not overnight, not with some magical detox tea. Jonathan has been open about committing to movement, and one habit became the spine of the whole transformation: 10,000 steps a day. Not 10,000 steps when I feel motivated, not 10,000 steps when the weather is cute. 10,000 every day. And sometimes that meant doing something almost comedic and kind of inspiring at the same time, pacing in a hotel room like a man on a mission, turning 4 walls into a personal marathon track. Because when your life is touring, airports, rehearsals, late nights, and room service, consistency becomes the real flex. Over time, that discipline stacked up into something visible. Reports and updates around his journey describe a huge drop, first around 5 stone, which is about 70 pounds, and later pushing into the headline-grabbing range of around 120 pounds. But the bigger point isn't the number, it's what the number represents. Control returning to a life that once felt hijacked. That's why this is alchemy. He didn't just lose weight, he rebuilt his relationship with his body. And there's another layer people miss. Jonathan has also talked about thyroid issues, including treatment for an overactive thyroid. That matters because thyroid problems can mess with energy, metabolism, mood, and the whole feeling of being in sync with yourself. So when people reduce his transformation to "he just got serious," it skips the real story. Getting serious is hard enough. Getting serious while managing your health is a different league entirely. Now, connect this back to the revelation in Chapter 3 because it's not random. Autism and routine can be a brutal combo when life is chaos, but it can also become a superpower when you design a pattern that protects you. That 10,000-step rule? That's structure. That's a daily promise. That's a way to tell your nervous system, we're safe, we're steady, we're moving forward. And once a routine locks in, the hyperfocus can turn into momentum that other people call willpower, even when it's really strategy. But let's not pretend it was all clean, glossy, and easy. While the outside was transforming, the inside still had real grief. One of the quietest gut-punch details from his recent era is that he was recording new music while mourning his cats, Polly and Pandora. That sounds small to some people until you've loved an animal like family. Then you get it. Imagine trying to sing with a steady breath while your heart is doing that slow, private breaking that nobody claps for. So when you see the 2025 to 2026 version of Jonathan Antoine, the sleek, disciplined global tenor, you're not looking at a glow-up for the timeline. You're looking at a man who built survival into a schedule. He didn't escape the machine by shouting, he escaped by walking, step after step after step. So let me ask you this, discipline or talent, which one do you think is harder to maintain for 14 years straight? And be real, if you had to choose one habit to save your future, would you pick walking, food changes, therapy, or something else entirely? Because now, in 2026, Jonathan is no longer the boy from BGT. So why is he being treated like a king in places the British press has completely forgotten? 2026, the resurrection of a global king. And that's the part that flips the whole BGT story on its head. Because when people ask, what really happened to Jonathan Antoine from Britain's Got Talent, they're usually expecting a tragedy, a scandal, or a slow fade into forgotten talent show dust. But what actually happened is more interesting. He slipped out of the UK reality TV trap, quietly built a new kingdom, and came back wearing his own crown. By January 2026, Jonathan wasn't teasing a comeback like a former contestant begging for relevance. He announced a new album.
I am here to announce to you a brand new album. Hopefully it's just an enjoyable, listenable, lovely experience for music lovers and enjoyers of my voice.
Speaking to you, with the tone of someone who isn't trying to prove he belongs anymore, because he already knows. The message behind it was clear. This is music made by a person, not a product. It's described as an artist more connected to his purpose, open-hearted, and ready to let the songs meet listeners where they are. That's not marketing speak. That's the sound of someone who finally stopped performing acceptable and started performing true. And you can feel that shift when you look at where he's being celebrated. Because while British headlines move on fast, the world doesn't always follow that script. Jonathan shared an experience from Ho Chi Minh City where he said he was treated like absolute royalty. Think about that. Not as a nostalgic, remember that kid from BGT 2012 moment, but as a grown tenor welcomed with real hospitality, private performances, new connections, and the kind of respect that doesn't come from viral clips. That's global fame in its most powerful form, the kind that doesn't need loud UK press to exist. So when I say he's beaten the system, I'm not saying he won a trophy. I'm saying he learned the real cheat code. The show gave him a launch pad, but he didn't stay trapped inside the TV version of himself. And then there's the Omar Khairat connection, which is where things get even more interesting. Jonathan was invited as a guest artist for a tribute honoring Omar Khairat, the legendary Egyptian composer, at a major event held in Riyadh. That matters because it puts him in a completely different room than the Britain's Got Talent nostalgia circuit. This is cultural prestige, the kind that treats your voice like an instrument of legacy, not a talent show memory. Now, here's where the global king part really lands. Jonathan's recent era is not just about him signing with whoever will take him. It's him building. He's been openly talking about creating music with intention, and he's been working in a more independent, hands-on way, including creative partnership and production work that brings his sound closer to his own identity. This is what independence looks like in the real world. More control, more ownership, more say in what your voice becomes. And if you've ever watched the way reality TV turns people into characters, you understand why that's the real victory. Because the truth is, the runner-up label is only powerful if you accept it as the ending. Jonathan didn't. He took the part people mocked, the quietness, the sensitivity, the intensity, and he rebuilt his life around it. We talked about autism and the way routine can become a superpower. We talked about the discipline, the walking, the health battle, the transformation you can't fake. Now we're seeing the result. A performer who isn't trying to be the loudest in the room. He's trying to be the clearest. Imagine if you were Jonathan. Would you prefer the global fame he has now, the kind that gets you treated like royalty in Vietnam and honored in rooms connected to Egyptian musical legends? Or would you rather have the 2012 dancing dog kind of fame, loud for a season, then gone like a trending hashtag? And another question, what does winning even mean if the prize is losing yourself? Because here's the answer to the title, and I want you to really sit with it. What really happened to Jonathan Antoine from BGT is not that he disappeared, it's that he escaped. He stopped being a product and became a person. He learned his brain, he reclaimed his body, he protected his craft, and he built a career that doesn't need the UK machine to validate it. From a bullied kid in Essex to a global tenor who speaks his truth, is his journey the ultimate BGT success story? So, no, Jonathan Antoine didn't vanish after Britain's Got Talent 2012. He tuned himself to an authentic frequency. From a shy Essex kid to a global tenor, he chose resilience over hype. Speaking to You lands in March 2026. Does his journey change how you view reality TV stars? Like, subscribe to our channel, and comment your favourite Jonathan performance below.